Now, dungeons and raids in Warframe. Imagine the raids coming back, lads. Imagine. Calm down. I already know exactly what you're thinking.
Stop! My penis can only get so erect.
Falcha, how you all doing? Let's just have a chat today, shall we? We don't talk enough. So if you cast your minds back to one of our recent dev streams, you will remember raids being mentioned again. You might remember us being told that there is still a group of developers within Digital Extremes that are looking at bringing raids back, but in a more condensed manner or in a smaller form than what the older raids used to be like. Now, I don't know if this means that there would no longer be a large scale 8-player mission cut down to just 4 players, or if they mean that the mission would just be on a smaller scale than what they used to be, so not as much things to do in it. Now, maybe it just means less standing on buttons, who knows, maybe you don't have to stand on those buttons anymore, but whatever it is, I think most of the community would be definitely glad to have raids back, because it would give you something to fucking do in times like this. Now, on top of them bringing back the raids, they also mentioned that they are working on a smaller raid-esque type of mission. I guess a dungeon, because dungeons in most MMOs are seen as small raid-esque types of missions where you have to complete tasks, kill bosses and so on. So one of these new mission types is also being worked on and was scheduled to be released, we're told, sometime this summer. I don't know if that is early summer or late summer, if that means next summer or 2021, I'm not entirely sure. We just don't have the details. Now, I'm also not sure what all of you in the Warframe community expect from missions like these in a Warframe surrounding the raids and dungeons. Warframe isn't like Warcraft or like Final Fantasy, so do you expect bosses? Do you expect mini bosses, tactics, mini events within the raid or dungeon? And more importantly, I guess, what kind of rewards would you expect? Like everything, rewards will make or break a game mode being added into Warframe. So you can see why I wanted to say let's just talk. There is a lot to take into account when looking at raids possibly returning or dungeon style missions being introduced into Warframe. Scaling, it's that fucking word, right? I dread whenever someone starts talking about scaling. Scaling has always been an issue in Warframe. Beyond a certain level, you can easily get one shot from across the room, so it's kind of a bullshit difficulty, or you have to fully embrace that cheese mode and camping strategies in order to survive, so it's not really fun either. Eventually, scaling is something that is going to need to be addressed in a big way by Digital Extremes themselves, but I'm not going to go on about it right now. The power of our weapons and our warframes is also an issue. I feel like any form of difficult mission being added into the game will have its design choices heavily affected by the game's power creep, and judging by past dev streams and prime times, level 60 to 80 in normal missions or 100 with the sorties seems to be roughly what Digital Extremes sees as the end game level of enemies for a mission, which is a problem I'm sure for a lot of you within the community. Our weapons and frames are so damn powerful that we mince through any meaningful content in no time at all. Fisher missions, Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, arbitrations, the sorties, boss fights, poor fucking Sergeant, all of those we can mince through them no problem. So as a way to compensate for this, lately Digital Extremes have had to add in more invulnerability phases, arbitration drones to make units immune to our damage, nullifying fields to switch Warframe powers off, basically all kinds of artificial difficulty, and this is a hole that they find themselves because of the game's power creep. Now, over the last year, with the introduction of certain arcanes, Umbral mods, new Umbral format, modular weapons and other items, we are getting more and more powerful as each update gets added. We've almost ascended to the level of, I guess, a space god, kinda. So on one side you've got scaling being broken beyond a certain level with insane armor values and the damage model as well, and then you've got our power being insane up to a certain point. Now, to fix this, they could either fully embrace the power creep within the game and give us missions that start at level 100, beyond level 100, even 120 and so on, but maybe don't scale those missions up so the enemies won't scale up like they do in endless missions. Just keep them around 100 to 150 for raids or dungeons, allow us to get the use of these powerful weapons and setups without having to deal with the broken scaling beyond a point where you would literally, regardless of how much armor you have, get one shot from across the map. Now, they could go a different route either, and route, like a fucking tree. They could go a different road that might not sound as appealing to everyone in the Warframe community and basically scale everything down. I know that sounds really fucking crazy, but this was actually something that World of Warcraft did after one of their expansions, where everyone had health values in the hundreds of thousands and dealt damage by the millions. So what they did was, when they released one of their newest expansions, they scaled everything down. Enemy health and armor was scaled down, which allowed them to adjust it. Player weapons, abilities and stats were also scaled downwards, so instead of your protection warrior having 1 million health values, he had 40,000. Instead of dealing 2 million with your damage, you dealt 20,000. So allowed them to adjust all of the armor values in game, and it could be something that Digital Extremes looked at with Warframe, or maybe it wouldn't work. I'm not entirely sure. Now, at some point, the game's scaling, definitely the armor scaling and damage scaling of enemies, and of course the power creep of our Warframes and weapons will probably need to be addressed. Whether that's this year, next year, or a good bit down the road, I'm not entirely sure. But I do feel like it's getting out of hand. Nearly with every mainline update or every major update we get at least one weapon that either gets right up there with the top tier weapons and pushes them down a little bit, or it basically becomes the go-to weapon for the majority of the community until it eventually gets nerfed. Now, like I said, let me know what you expect or hope for with the returning raids and possible dungeon types of missions showing up in the summer. I'm sure a lot of you will talk about rewards, because rewards, like I said earlier, have to be a big issue. Do me a huge favour and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, or don't if you didn't. Subscribe for more Warframe, and as always, thanks very much for watching.